Hey guys, welcome to the second lesson on WCF using C#. In this lesson, we're going to take a first look at WCF and we're going to build our first basic application using WCF. Now, before we get into anything, and there is a bunch to get into, there's a lot to learn at first, but hopefully we're going to work through it all and we're going to build some really cool applications through the process that I think everyone will understand it. But the first thing we need to talk about is what is WCF? I keep on saying WCF. I said it a lot last video, but I really haven't explained it that much. Now, if you know what WCF is, then that's probably the reason why you're watching this. But if you're watching this because you want to know what WCF is, that is also okay. So WCF, first of all, stands for Windows Communication Foundation, and basically WCF is specific and unique to Microsoft, but the underlying concept of WCF is this concept of web services, which is not unique to Microsoft. WCF is kind of a wrapper around that. So basically, WCF is a way, or is a framework that we can use to build service-oriented applications. And what does that mean? Well, basically, this is how we create applications that have clients and services or servers. Basically, let's say we want to create a chatting application, and this chatting application, basically you could log in and you have a friends list and you can send messages to each other and things like that, similar to maybe Skype. Basically, we can use WCF to create the application, because with WCF we can create a server, which is kind of the heart, or a service, which is the heart of the program. Then we have clients that will connect to that service, and the service will distribute and send the messages to other clients to produce the effect you want. So for example, I'm Jesse and I'm trying to send a message to Bob. How it works is Jesse types in his message in the client, he types enter. That message is then serialized, which we'll talk about a little, sent over the wire to the service. The service then interprets it, figure out what it needs to do with it, and then if we were making a messaging application, it would then send that message that I typed over to someone else, to another client, and then that client will get the message, and then it will print onto his screen or whatever it wants to do, the message. So that's how we would create some kind of messaging application. And we will do that in one of these videos for learning WCF. But yeah, basically, WCF allows us to create servers and clients and applications that clients can interact with each other over the internet. And, in modern times, all modern applications, for the most part at least, are designed this way. Everything we do, whether it's applications on the phone or applications on the computer, we're always interacting with people over the internet and other clients over the internet. And that is how we'll do it using WCF. There are other ways to do this. There are old technologies. There are newer technologies like WCF. We could even use pure native sockets. And but that basically we get the same effect from sockets, we can get the same effect from using sockets that we can get from WCF. But like I said, WCF is kind of like a wrapper around that. It's kind of like a wrapper around sockets to help make it easier to do. And you'll see that we'll be able to build a server and a client architecture here in this example really pretty easily. And I could, if I wanted to, host it online, and I could give my client to all you guys to download, and you could connect to it and do this example. You could connect to my service and do what we do here if we really wanted to. And we will do stuff like that in the future. So a little bit before we get into creating projects and stuff, because like I said, there's a lot to learn, and I'm not joking when I say that. There is a lot to learn. WCF is a huge topic, and there are books written on WCF. It's very big. But I want to just talk about some basic terminology, so when I'm talking, you guys aren't completely lost. So basically, when we think about services when we're designing them, we're going to think about, and at least this is how I'm going to teach you guys to design them, because I think it's the best way to do it. And there are lots of different ways to do things. So when we design our service, we're going to create a class for a service, and we're going to create an interface called a service contract. Now, without going into too much details, basically, the service is the implementation for things that are exposed to outside clients. That's the internal implementation of the things. And the service contract is what is exposed to the world, or to whoever we expose it to. The service contract is exposed to them, and that specifies, if you know what an interface is, it specifies, actually you should know what an interface is if you're learning this. An interface specifies methods that need to be implemented. So it's kind of like a promise. So if we have a service implementation which implements this service contract, and then we have a service contract that the whole world can see, for example, basically what that relationship is, the clients can see what the server has to offer through the service contract. So it says, oh, there's a login function, there's a log out function, there's a send message function. There's all these functions that the service contract supports, but the actual implementation of those, what it actually does when it logs in, what the service does, that's in the service implementation, and that's hidden behind the scenes. So we have a service and a service implementation, and we'll take a look at, in a service contract, and we'll take a look at that. For the service contract, we have to mark it with some attributes. We need to mark it with a service contract attribute, and for the functions in it, we have to mark them with operation contract attributes. And that's just part of the WCF kind of wrapper, where it's doing things for you behind the scenes to make it easier for you. So we only have to specify these couple things. And also, when we talk about some other things, there's some other attributes that we need to specify. Okay, so that's that. Now that we have, let's say, a service and a service contract, we as a service, we need to somehow host this service so that people can connect to it and interact with it. So hosting is a big thing, and there are a couple of ways to host services. For the most part, I'm a big believer of self-hosting, and the reason that I like self-hosting is because I like being, for the most part, the applications that we're going to be building, we're going to be the owners of both the server and the client. So self-hosting just works better, and you'll see what I mean by that. But yeah, self-hosting basically allows us to host our service inside of an application. So I could host a service as a console application. I could host a service in a Windows form, a WPF, or a Windows service. There's lots of ways I can host it. I could also host it in IIS, which I will do an example of that probably one day. I'm not a fan of doing it that way. Like I said, I like hosting it in, most of the time I'll host my services in console applications, and I will host that for this example inside of a console application. And we'll talk about that more also. So once we have a host and we're hosting our service, let's say we're using self-hosting and we're hosting it in a console application. In order for people to connect to it and interact with it, we need to expose what is called endpoints. And endpoints are basically basically just describe how the service can be reached. And what an endpoint consists of is an address, and the address and we'll see. We'll look at an address. It's just what you think in an address. So let's say I want to connect to an HTTP service. I would type in, if I was the client, I would connect to HTTP :/ the IP, port, whatever, blah 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 blah. That's the address. Then it also has a binding. The binding indicate the protocols that are supported when messages are sent, and we'll look at that. So that means, like, are we sending it TCP, UDP, HTTP? What protocol are we sending it? And then the endpoint also specifies the contract, which specifies the operations. Like I said, this is where we expose that contract to all people so that they can see what the server has to offer. That's the service. That's the endpoint contract. And the last thing I just want to quickly talk about before we start diving in is proxies. I'm going to say proxy often when I'm creating a client. And basically a proxy is, once again, WCF hiding the details behind the scenes of like serialization and things like that. So it hides those behind the scenes. And a proxy is just something that exposes or allows us to actually call the service operation. So a proxy allows us to say, okay, service.login, or do something to the service. This is what the proxy is, and it hides the serialization details from the client, it hides those behind the scenes. So I'll say proxy quite often. And there's some other things that we still need to talk about, like channels and stuff like that, but we will over time. Now, I want to start creating projects and diving in. So, how I'm going to explain and show you guys this first example, we're going to create 3 different projects. The first project will be the server or the service. This will be a console application, so let's go ahead and create that. So I'm going to call my server or service product. Let's go product service. And I'm going to call my solution products, because this is going to use the AdventureWorks database. So, and we're going to be using the products in there. So that's why we're calling it this. Okay, this is my product service. This is going to be basically the heart of the application. This is what the clients will connect to. We're also going to need a client. So I'm going to say products client. It's also going to be a console application. And then the last thing I'm going to add is a class library, and this is going to be called product interfaces. And I'm going to delete that class in there. Okay, so I have 3 projects. Now, let me briefly explain them. Like I said, product service, this is the service. This is what clients will connect to get information. This could be hosted on a dedicated server by itself, and the clients connect to that. This is basically a server. So we have our server and our client. Our client is a client. It connects to the server. It's a basic client applications are most likely what you've been building this whole time. They're just basic applications that do stuff. The server is behind the scenes and does things like interacting with databases and stuff like you'll see here today. And then we have product interfaces. Now, the reason why I separate these into 3 different projects and what the product interfaces is, basically, like I told you, a service has a server implementation and the service contract. The contract is exposed to the client so that it knows what functions the server has that it can use, but it doesn't actually have the implementation of the functions. So that contract has to be accessible by the client. So basically, in the real world, when I'm done with this program, for example, the server is going to go maybe on a dedicated host. The client is going to go onto all my clients' computers. So that client computer needs to have that interface that shows what the server can do. So that's why I have that in a separate project, so that I'll include that into the client project, so that it can see what it can see what the server has. That's the reason why I'm separating it, and there'll be more reasons over time. There's actually another way to do this, which I'm going to talk about later. But basically, what if I don't own both the server and the client? I just want you guys to think about this for now. In this example, I'm going to own the server and the client, meaning that I can give the interfaces. I actually have the code for the interface, so I can just hand that to the client and I can modify it for the server. I mean, I have access to both of them. So that's why I can use an interface like this. But what happens if, let's say, I don't own the server? What if I'm contacting Amazon's web service to see what products they have on their website? I don't have access to their service, so I don't have access. I mean, I'm most likely not going to have access to their server contract either. So how am I going to get the information what the service can offer? How am I going to get that information? Well, basically, a service has this metadata, and basically this metadata includes all the information that it has in the interface. It includes informations like endpoint information and what functions that we can call, and we access that by basically requesting the information to the server through a metadata exchange. And I'm probably confusing you guys a lot right now, but we'll talk about this into the future. Probably next video I'm going to do the same exact example, but using a metadata exchange rather than doing it like this where I have the implementation here. So I'm going to stop talking about that, and I don't want to confuse people because this is already very confusing to start with. So we'll look at metadata and metadata exchange next video. Okay. So with that all aside, now we can start going ahead and building the applications. Oops, I did not mean to run that. So basically what this program is going to do is we're going to create a server that contacts our database that we set up in the first video. The client is going to be able to request specific information. So the client is going to be able to say, server, can I get a list of all the products? And we'll have to implement that. And then the client will also be able to say, server, can I get a specific product information? So can I get information about a specific product? So what will happen is the client will say, server, actually, let me just draw this real fast. This will be a good example. Okay, so basically what's going to happen in this, what we're building right now, is we're going to have our client and our server. Basically, in this type of application, if this is our client, this is our server. What's going to happen is our server has access only to this database, the VentureWorks database. And inside the VentureWorks database, it contains all the information needed for about products, employees, all that kind of stuff. The reason why we want only the server to have access to the database for protection of the database, sort of. There's some more reasons also. So basically, us as a client, we need to get, say, a list of all the products. So what will happen is the client will say, server, can I get a list of all the products? The server will say, sure. It will go to the database, get them, come back from the database. Then when it comes back from the database, it will do whatever it needs with the information, maybe put it into some kind of class, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that. And then once it has the information, it will send it back to the client, maybe through a return, because we access the server with functions. So the return type of the function will send it back to the client. So then when that happens, now the client has the information it needs. This is the kind of application that we're going to be building right now. There are different types. There's client to server to client. This is kind of just client to server. So this is what we're building. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set up our server to have a database. And if you remember from the first video, we set up the MySQL database, which contains all the information of the AdventureWorks database. So using ADO.NET, we're going to abstract away the concepts of having to query the database using SQL. We don't need to know SQL to get the data. We're going to be using ADO.NET and Language Integrated Query, or LINQ. These are two things that are built into C# that we can use to get information from a database rather than actually having to know SQL. Which you could do SQL if you wanted to, but it's a lot slower. This is a lot faster. Basically, ADO.NET, we can represent our database as an object. So let's say our database has a table called products. We could say, database.products dot, blah, 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 get some information, or do a for each loop over database.products. We can treat the entire database as an object using ADO.NET, which is a very powerful thing. So how we do that is we're going to right click on product service and we're going to go to add new item. Inside of new item, we're going to go to ADO.NET entity data model. And we're going to call this, we'll call it our database for now. So we'll say database and we'll hit add. Then this wizard's going to pop up. We're going to say generate from database. And then this screen's going to come up. Obviously mine's set up already, but I think this is wrong. I might have to change it. To add a connection to your database now, this is what we have to do. You have to hit new connection and your data source. You should be able to get MySQL database as your data source if you followed the steps correctly in the first video. You should be able to hit change and find MySQL database. We aren't using Microsoft SQL Server. We're using MySQL database. And this is what I was talking about to get this into Visual Studio. You need to download that one thing I was talking about. So once you have that, then we're going to connect to the server. So localhost root, whatever your password. My password's root because I don't really care. And then we're going to access what database? We're going to access AdventureWorks database. We can test the connection to see if it was successful, which it was. Hit OK. Next. And now I only want two tables from this. I only want the product table and the product inventory table. These are the only two tables we'll be using in this example. Throughout the course, we'll be using a lot of these tables for different kinds of applications. But for this one, we're just going to be using these two tables. So hit finish. Now, when I do this, this is going to generate a diagram that represents the database as an object. So as you can see, now I have this database model, diagram 1, which represents both product and product inventory. And now I can access these database properties and columns through code, treating them as objects. It's really cool, and I'll show you what I mean by that soon. So basically, here we are. Let's go ahead and save that. It'll take a second to save, and we can close that for now. So as you can see, we have our database right here in our server. So that's the first step. We have our database. Okay. Now, the second step is we need to actually create the WCF service. So to do that, we're going to right-click on Product Service, Add New Item, and we're going to scroll down to where is it? WCF Service, and this is going to be our service. So I'm just going to call it WCF Product Service. WCF Product Service. That's what I'm calling it. And I'm going to hit Add. So by doing that, I got two files. I got WCF Product Service and WCF Product Service. WCF Product Service, this is what I was telling you about. This is the implementation. By default, I have a function called doWork, and it implements the WCF Product Service. This is my service contract. As you can see, my service contract has the service contract contract attribute and the operation contract attribute, which represents this is an operation that a client can perform on the service. So that's that. However, I'm going to be moving this to my interface project. I don't want this inside of my service because I want this in my interfaces so that my client can have access to it, and it's just more organized that way. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this into the interface. I'm going to delete it in the server. I'm going to fix a couple things. I need to fix the namespace. I'm going to call it product interface interfaces. I need to add a reference to what is it? It's system.service model, and this is where WCF sort of lives. That will make this all go away. So that's what I need, a reference to that. So now my thing is in there. Now back inside of my WCF service, I need to now add a reference to my product's interfaces. So we need to add a reference to my product interfaces. Now that I added a reference to product interface, I should be able to resolve this. Yes, add my using statement for product interfaces, and now we're all good to go again. So we set up the service. So we have our service right here, and our IWCF product service interface in product interfaces. This is our service contract. This is what the client is going to use to say, oh, my service can perform this operation called do work. That is what we're going to use it for. Okay, inside of inside of our service contract, I'm going to set up a operation contract for our first operation, which is going to be to get a list of products. So list products. So this is our operation that we're going to have, and this is the first one that we're probably going to do, maybe 2 or 3. This is the first one that we'll start out with, and our client is going to be able to request a list of products from the service. So here's operation contract. Now that I have this, now I need to implement it, even though we're not going to implement it yet on the service. So I'm going to delete this. We don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to right click on that, hit implement interface, and now I implemented it. And it's throwing a new not implemented exception, which is fine. Okay, so now that we have most stuff set up, we need to actually, I told you about the service contract, which we have, and now there's hosting. We need to host the service. So to do that, inside of program, for our product service, this is where we're going to, inside of main, we're going to create our host. So to do that, we use a class called service host. So I'm going to say using service host. I want to right click and resolve that. Service host equals new service host, and it takes in a type of our service implementation. So in this case, it's going to be WCF product service. The using is there just to do some cleanup once the server closes. So inside of here, I'm going to say host.open to open our host and allow people to connect to us. I'm going to do a console.writeLine saying server is open. I don't know, and then console.writeLine, and then press enter to close server. Alright, so this is our server. It opens it, saying server open, and then press enter to close and shut down the server. And then we do console.readline just to wait there so that we don't exit the using loop or the using block, and then that will shut down the server. So we want to stay in there to make sure the server is up and running. So that is the host. So now our service is hosted. But if you think about it, we're missing something. How does it know the address, like where to connect to? How does it know what binding we're going to be using or protocol? So HTTP, TCP, UDP, how does it know? How does it know the contract? So how does it know these things? So we need to set up this information, and we're going to store this information into a file called app-config. Now, by default, we have some information in here already. We have information about our AdventureWorks entities, or this is our database connection. But by default, it puts some information in about services in the service model right here. But I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and we're going to build our own information. Now, once you get good at WCF, you'll be able to come in here and write the information yourself. But for the meantime, you don't have to do that. There's a built-in wizard that we can use to configure the service information in the app config file. So we can right-click and hit Edit WCF Configuration. Inside of this, we're going to hit Create New Service, and this is going to build what we need. So our service type, we're going to select our product service. Wait, is it that? Okay, I fixed it. Okay, I just had to recompile my program. I never compiled it. So yeah, you're gonna hit Browse, Bin, Debug in this case right now. Our product service.exe, and then inside we have our product service, WCF product service. We're gonna open that. That is our service type. Then next, then our service contract, which it knows its product interfaces. And it got it from the product interfaces, product-interfaces.dat, which is correct. That's our interface. That's our service contract, if you remember. This is where we can set the protocol or bindings. We're going to be using, well, in this example, we'll use HTTP. There is other ones. There's actually UDP that isn't on this list. So we'll hit next for HTTP. This is where we can define basic and advanced settings. So basically right now we're going to stick with basic web service, but eventually when we talk about duplex communication like that, which allows us to create programs that the service can communicate with the client through a callback, then we'll get into that. But right now, let's just stick with basic. Now we specify the address of our endpoint. So let's just, we'll say localhost going through port, 9999. And we'll just say through product service. So this is our address. Hit next. And then finish. So this is our basic things. Inside of endpoints, we're just going to give our endpoint a name by clicking endpoints, empty name, and we'll say, product service endpoint. And then we'll hit file, save, file, exit, and then yes to all. So as you can see, this just built this service model right here. All that was just configuring this basic little setup right here. So this is that. Now that we have that, this is for the service. So now, by default, inside of our program, when we do the service host, it's going to get the information it needs from the service model in here, from this. So it will say that this is my endpoint, what protocol I'm using, the name, and the contract. So now that I did that, now I need to do this for the client. The client also needs to know how to communicate with the server. So how are we going to access the server? So in here, we're going to go Edit WCF Connection. This is for the client now. We're going to hit Create a New Client. We're going to say Manual next. The contract, which is going to be, the contract is the same contract. So we need to go to the interfaces, bin, debug, product interfaces, and then this is our contract in our product interfaces. Open that, hit next, HTTP, basic, and then this is going to be the same local host because we're both on local host. If we were connecting to a server on, let's say, a dedicated host, we would change this to the IP of the dedicated host. But I'm hosting the client and the server on the same computer. That's why they're both local hosts. This is where the client is going to connect to. Localhost port 9999/product service is, I think, what I called it. Next, finish. We'll give us a name, product. And then we'll hit file, save, file, exit, yes to all. And now that's the implementation for a client. As you can see, client now. And there's the implementation. So now the app config files, which contain the information that I was talking about, are set for both the server and the client, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Actually, we will have to worry about it one more time, but I'll show you when. So that's there. So now we're almost there. So we created a product service contract, we connected the database, we're hosting it. So what now we have to do? Now we have to actually write the implementation for list products. So this list product, this is going to be this is what's going to get called when a client makes a call to the service saying, okay, I'm calling list products. This is what's going to happen when it calls. So we need to implement this behavior. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of string called, I don't know, products list. And this is going to be the data. This is going to be the data that we're going to send back to the client because they called. We're going to set up a try and catch, and we're just going to ignore any exceptions that are thrown right now. But basically, exceptions can get thrown when we're accessing a database using a method that we'll be doing. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So now that we have the list and the try catch, we need to go ahead and create the connection to the database. So to do that, I'm going to say using, I don't know what it's called, InventoryWorks entities is what it's called. Database equals new database, InventoryWorks, inside the using. The using is just for cleaning up. I'll be talking about that actually in my new video in the exam reference section. I'm doing the video on garbage collection, so we'll talk about that in that. So now that I have my database, remember I was telling you, using ADO.net, I can treat the database as an object. So I have my database. This is my entities, which I created down here, remember? That's that. Now I can access that using it as, like it's an object, like database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var products equals. Now this is language integrated query. I'm going to first type it and then I'll explain if you don't know what link is. From product in database.products, select product.product number. We only want the product numbers of them all. And then product list equals products dot to list. So let me explain here what's going on. Basically, this is a link query or language integrated query. Basically, I'm querying this products database. So what I'm saying is I'm saying from product in database. Oh wait, wait a second. I'm just gonna say P. Okay. P. I don't want to confuse anyone with the product class. So from P in database.products. So this is basically saying, this is basically a for each loop. It's saying for every product in this table, P is going to represent that product at one point in time. And then inside of that product, we're gonna select the number. So this query is going to return a list, basically a list of. This is going to basically return a list of product numbers only. Product numbers only. That's it. And that will be stored into products. And then products is a type of iQueryable. And then we're going to do this toList extension method, which just converts it into a list so that we can store it into products list. Now, if you don't know LINQ, there are other ways to do this. For example, I don't have to use LINQ. I could use for each loop. I could say for each var p in database.products. This is my products table. I know I could just go product list dot add p dot product number. This and these are exactly the same. This is doing a for each loop over the products, and it's adding only the product numbers. These are the same exact thing. This is just using LINQ. This is using a for each loop. So whatever you're more comfortable with, you can go ahead and do that. Now, like I said, ADO.NET allows us to treat the whole database as an object. So products, this is actually the products table. If you look at the database, let me open up this one. Here's all my tables in my database in Navicat. Product, this is what it's going in. So it's going into this table through code, and it's going to be returning all the product numbers, which are these numbers. And it's getting that from using ADO.NET and this right here. So database.products select p.product number. This will get a list of only the product numbers. You can use the for each way also. But yeah, so basically ADO.NET allows us, one more time I'm going to say it, allows us to treat the database as an object. So I can go database.products. That's the products table. And I can do things like this. It also creates tables for us. So let's say I wanted to add a product to the thing. I could say product, where is it? Product. Right here. Look, this product, wait, is this the right one? Product server. Product P, let's say P equals new. Product P dot. Look at the things in here. It created classes for each table. So I can create a product P equals new product. I can set all the details for a new product, and then I can add it to the database. It created a class called product, which directly represents this product table. All of these tables, if I add them, will get classes. ADO.NET will create classes that represent these automatically. It's very powerful, and we'll be using this a lot. So if you don't understand it now, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it a lot more in the future. So now we have our product list. So all we're going to do is we're going to return product list. And basically, when the client calls this function list products, it's going to do this code, and it's going to return that back to the client all over the internet. Now, the cool thing about WCF, which is why it's so powerful, is because we're creating a client and server application. We're having a client talk to a server over the internet, but yet we are not dealing with any of the serialization, any of the hard stuff with this. It's all hidden behind the scenes using WCF. All we create is functions. Now, coming from sockets, or if you program a lot with sockets, I mean, this is extremely different, amazing, how we can represent, calling a server just by calling a function like this and getting a return value like this. It's just amazing. And you'll appreciate it if you've been working with sockets and other technologies that do the same thing. So this is my function. This is the implementation for it. Now, I'm pretty sure we set up everything for the server, the interface. The last thing we have to do is actually write the client. But when this is called, I'm just gonna write a console statement so that we can see that the server is being called, saying list products has been called by a client. So I'm just going to write that whenever a client calls this function. So now let's go into the client code. We set up a lot of it, and I think this is the last part we have to do, if I remember. So the first thing we have to do is we have to add a reference to service model. So we set up the app config file for this. Now we need to create a channel factory. Basically, we need to create our proxy that I was talking about before. The proxy allows us to connect to the service and hides all the serialization and stuff like that behind the scenes. To do that, though, we need to create a channel factory and then create a channel. So to do that, we're going to say channel factory, and I'm going to resolve that. And inside of the generic parameter, we're going to pass in WCF product service. This is the service contract. Oh, I need to add a reference to the interfaces from here. Then I can resolve that. Channel factory equals new channel factory. That, and then we need to pass into its parameters. We're going to pass in the name of the endpoint. You don't need to do this, but it's good practice because eventually we're going to get into multiple endpoints. So that's my channel factory. So it's an important thing to note here is because I'm the owner of the client and the server, I have access to the WCF service contract. Because of that, I can see what the service can do. I can see what function it has to offer. And by passing it into here, you'll see that I'll be able to see the functions in the proxy. So now when I create the proxy, to do that, we're going to say WCF Service. This is the contract. I'll call it proxy equals channel factory dot create channel, and that will create our channel and our proxy. Now I can go proxy dot, and I can see the function that the server has to offer. It has to offer list products, this function, which returns a list of string. So I'm going to say, I don't know, list of string products equals proxy dot list products. That's what I want to do. So basically, products will now hold a list of all the products from the database from the server, which is really, really cool. So this is why we wanted to store the interface into its own little project, and there's going to be more reasons in the future. But because we're doing it this way, the client has access to the actual service contract interface, so we can use that for the proxy. If we don't have access to the service contract, which will happen if we're, let's say, contacting Amazon service, we'll have to use a metadata exchange endpoint, and we'll talk about that in the next video probably. And that will be a little bit different. We won't actually have the implementation. We won't actually have the service contract. So we have to kind of download that from the server before we connect to it first. And you'll see what I mean by that in the next video. But yeah, so we created our channel factory, our proxy, and then we called the server. This line right here calls the server. Proxy.list right here, this is calling the server. So what happens, it goes to here, to the server implementation, it will come into here, and it will return it back to the client, and it will store the results into product all over the internet. I could host this program, I could give you the client code, and then you could connect to my service over the internet from wherever you live in the entire world and get the information that you need from my database that's hosted on my computer. It's very cool. So now I did that, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to print the products into the console. So I'm going to say for each var s or I don't know, p in products, console.writeLine p. So before I run this and show you, I want to make sure you guys, if you were following along doing this, make sure you have Visual Studio running as an administrator. You need to run it as an administrator for this to work through debugging. So I'm going to right click on my solution. I'm going to hit properties. I'm going to set the project that's going to start up. I want the client to start up, and I want the service to start up. I'm going to hit OK, and now I'm going to run the program. Hopefully no problems. I don't think there should be any problems. Okay, look what happened. Oh crap, hold on. The program's closing for some reason. I'm just going to cancel that. Read line. And let's try that again. Okay. So basically what happened is, look what happened. So this is my server over here. As you can see, server is open when the program starts. Press enter to close server, and then list products has been called by client. Look, that was called by client. If we look, when the program started, it got all this information from the database over the server, which is amazing. This is going over the internet, getting the information, and then displaying it. Let's go ahead and, for the client, let's make it type in something. Let's make it like type in go. So console.write line, enter go to get data from server. String s or input equals console.readline. If input equals go, then get the data from the server and display it. Let's go ahead and run this now. So now it's going to say server's open, nothing happens. Enter go to get data from server. Watch what happens when I type go. It's going to, first you're going to see a message on the server because it's going to send its request to the server. The server is going to display the message that I wrote, get the information that it needs, send it back to the client, and then display it. So ready, here we go. Go. As you see, the server got the request, it printed its message, then it sent the data back to the client, and now the client is displaying it. And like I said, I could give you this code for this client, host this, open up my ports on my router. Oops. Oh, of course it's not going to come. There we go. Open up the ports on my router, and then you could connect to it, granted if you had the IP in the client. So whether all the addressing and everything is right, you could connect over the internet using this. That's why WCF is amazing. Why it's very, very cool. And how we're going to make some very, very cool applications in the future. So that's that. I want to show you, I'm going to change the implementation of the server. Instead of using link, I'm just going to show you how to use a for each using this. So actually, let's do for each var p in database products list dot add p dot product number. So this is the same exact thing. Let's go ahead and run this one. If you don't know link, you can always do things like that to get around it. It just takes longer. So server's open, go, the same data is pulled. That's the data I was trying to get. So there's one more thing I want to do before the end of this video. Even though this video has been going on very long, I want to create a function that the server can do, a server operation that gets a specific product information. So once we get the list of product numbers, then we can use that to actually get more information about the product. So the first thing to do is we need to go to the contract and create another operation contract. And this one, it's going to be different. Since we're going to be getting information from the database, like we'll get the name, the product number, the color, and the price of it. How are we going to send that data back to the client? We need to send it back in some kind of object. So how we're going to do that is we're going to create a class that will represent that data. So we'll say, I don't know, this class will be called product data. Make it public. And product data is going to have the things that I said. It's going to have public string name. It's going to have public string product number. It's going to have product string, public string, I think color is a string. Color, I'll have to double check on that. And then the price, I think the price is a double. I think it's a double. Public double list price get set. So this is my product data. So now if I go back to my service contract is going to be returning type product data. And the function is going to be called get product. And you have to pass in a string product number. So this gets all the product numbers. And then you can call get product, which takes in a product number, and it will return the product data. Because think about it, how else am I going to return data? Yes, I could have used maybe in a list of string again, and the first element is, the first element is the name, then the second one is the product number, then color, then list price. I could have done that, but this is just easier to say, okay, create product data. And the cool thing about this, because it's inside of product interfaces, that means the client can also see product data. So that when I return it, it knows what product data is on the client side also. Because it's declared inside of product interfaces. That's the cool thing about that. So now we have that. Now we need to go to the service and actually implement it. So I'm going to say implement interface. And now we need to implement this function on the server. So what we're going to do is we're going to say product data, product data equals null. We're going to set up our try catch again. Inside of here, we're going to create our database. So I'm just going to copy that. So this is our database connection. Now, once again, there is multiple ways of doing this. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. I'm going to first use the built-in extension method called first, which takes in a lambda expression. So I'm going to say product. Okay. Product matching product. Product right here. This is the class that's created by ADO.NET by itself because I'm getting the product information from the database. So I want to say product. Product matching product equals database.products.first, which simply just gets the first thing that matches the condition, returns the first element of a sequence, and the sequence is going to be based off of a lambda expression. So I'm going to say P goes to P dot product number equals product number. Okay. So basically what this is saying is get the first product that matches, get the first product whose product number matches my product number that was passed in as a parameter. That's what that is saying, and then that will get stored into matching product. And then once I have matching product is the whole class. This has all the information about that product. But I'm only sending back the product data, which is only 4 specific pieces of that. So to get that, I'm going to say product data equals new product data. Then I'm going to say product data dot call or name equals matching product dot name. Product data dot product number equals matching product dot product number. product data dot list price equals matching product dot list price, and product data dot color equals matching product dot color. So the matching product is the entire row in the database. It's the entire, all the information that that product has in that table in the database. The product data is a class that we created that the client knows, and it only contains 4 pieces of information. So that's where I'm getting that. And then I'm just going to return the product data back to the caller. Now, I don't have to use first. I mean, there's a lot of ways I could do that. I mean, I could use link. I could use a for each loop to do this. If I was doing a for each loop, whenever I got the first element that matches, I would just use that one. I could use link by doing something like this. You don't have to worry about this. I don't know if var query equals from pros in database dot products, where pros dot product number equals the product number that was typed in. Select pros, so that will get where the product numbers are equal to each other. And then to actually get the product, I can say product I don't know, P, we'll say equals query first or default, which just returns the first element or default value. So P, I must have used P somewhere. Yeah, let's say PP. PP will now have that information. Don't worry about this. I'll be doing this in later lessons. Basically, this is the same exact thing. You should, before starting learning WCF and stuff like that, you should take a look into, what Lambda expressions are, what extension methods are, what link is. Do some research on link and stuff, because it utilizes all these things. So we have product matching product equals database.products. This is the whole database table of products. And I'm saying the first product that matches this condition, that has the product number of the product in the database, matches the product number that was typed in. If it was, get the information from that, store it into product data, and then return product data back to the caller. So now that I have that inside of my program, this is my client program now. So now I'm going to say, okay, do the list, console.readLine, it does the list. After it prints all the values out, then I'm going to say console.writeLine, enter a product number to get info about. I don't know. String P number equals console.readLine, and then I'm going to say product data equals proxy dot get product. This is the function that we got that returns product data, passing in P number, and then that information will get stored into data, because we know about product data because of it's stored into product interfaces. Then when I have that, then I'm just gonna say console.writeLine data.color, console.writeLine data.listPrice, data.name, and data.product number. So we'll just display those things to the console. So let's go ahead and run this program. This is going on way too long in this video, so I need to hurry up. So the server is running. Now I type in go on my client. It gets a list of all the things. Now I can type in a number to get the more detailed information about it. So I'm going to type in BKR19B52. Hit enter. Oh crap, hold on. Let's add okay, let's try that one more time. Server's running, type in go, get the information from the server, BKR19B52, enter. It then goes into the server, gets requests, gets the information. That product is black. It's $539. This is the name of it, I think, and then that's the product number again. So it got the information from it. If I go look into the database, so here's the product database table. Watch this. So my product number that I typed in, I'm going to say product number that I typed in was BKR19B52. Type that, click here. This is the product that my program got. Look, that's the name of it. We got that. The color is black. The price is this, and that's all the information that we got. There's all this other information that's still available that we can get, but that's the only information that we wanted that or was interested about. And so my program did this. It did some querying. It found this specific product number by doing that first thing, like I was showing you. And then it got the information, stored it into the product data, returned it to the client, and now I display it. So I know this video was very fast. I know it was rushing, and it was probably very confusing. I tried to explain it the best I could, but this video is so long right now. I need to finish this up. But so I would recommend just following along, doing these, trying to understand as much as you can. I'm going to be doing more examples over time, doing examples showing more things. There are so many features of WCF that I'll be talking about that we'll be doing. We're going to be building some really cool applications. We'll be building login applications. We'll be building chatting applications. We'll be building all kinds of cool applications. So I definitely think this series of videos is going to be worth it. It is slightly difficult. So if this is too challenging for you, let me know. I'll tell you topics that you should learn. I'll try to help you out. And hopefully, hopefully everyone will like this. So thanks for watching. And also, wait, one more thing. Go ahead and in the comment, check out and follow this channel on Twitter, JD Programming. That's where I'm going to be posting information where upcoming videos, things I'm doing, and that will be really the way that I can contact you guys and interact with you guys. So follow that if you want to be able to interact with me a little bit more and figure out what I'm doing. So thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for more videos.